Hello and welcome back to More Than a Game, a podcast dedicated to the Premier League, the A-League and more. Today on the show, Socceroos fish El Tuna out of the talent pool for a couple of clutch World Cup qualifiers, another Melbourne derby, some peak A-League moments and a manager sacking for good measure. Plus, can a lovable American save a Premier League team from relegation? I'm your host, Colby, and just as we're thinking of one, Jesse, we've got another one, the main one, back on the pod today. Jesse, how are you, mate?
Mate, I'm good. Good. Happy to be here as always.
Happy to be here. And here for all of your Oz football and Newcastle United content, it's our favourite soccer journo, Shanen. Mate, how are you?
Oh, I'm good, thanks. I'm even better now that you pumped my tyres up already a little bit.
We've got to give you a little pump up every time you're on the pod. You know, you're here, there, doing interviews, doing bits. Good to see. Good to see. Why don't you hit us with your moment of the week straight off the bat, Shanen?
My moment of the week is a little bit of an embarrassing one, but I love these peak A-League moments. And the fact that on a match day, Central Coast Mariners Twitter got fully taken down. I think the reason was because the account wasn't able to verify that it was over 13 years old. And as for A-League moments, I mean, come on, that's got to be up there, especially on a match day when they're traveling to Mudgee. I just feel sorry for the media guy having to switch to the Marv and the Mariners account and tweet the game.
I honestly didn't realize this had happened until, like, I don't know, an embarrassingly long time after the match. And like, sort of, I wasn't really on Twitter much during that match, but like I was, and then I looked back at the tweets afterwards, and I saw all these tweets from the Marvin account, and I'm like, who is this Marvin account sort of like posing as the Mariners, and why are they doing it? And I dead set thought it was Durga Ong, like just creating another, creating another account, and I'm like, why is he doing this? Why does he always do this? So I've given you a bad rap. If you listen to the pod, but yeah, hilarious when I found out it was actually their burner account. It was the Mariners' own burner account.
Real case of the boy cried wolf there with Durga. It's interesting because I didn't know any of this, and then I just saw that they had Marvin and the CCM handle, and I was thinking, well, it's out there using your mascot as your main account. But I mean, if anyone's going to do it, the Mariners are going to do it. So good on them.
And they made a big thing of it too. Like looking back, they're like, all right, Marvin's going to live tweet this and like pics of him and stuff. It was great.
Yeah, it's good.
You'll love to see it. Jesse, what did you love to see this week?
I mean, we're crossing to the All Whites, lads. I mean, we have plenty of Roos chat to come. Don't worry about that. But the All Whites, Ben Wayne on debut gets a goal.
Oh, boy.
Just to get past Papua New Guinea. And let's be honest, it wasn't the greatest display. In fact, probably one of the worst displays the All Whites have done in a while, and probably the worst possible time to do that. However, they got the win. And as we always say, it's, if you win when you play poorly, you've got to take some solace on that. So one of the highlights of the game was Ben Wayne getting his first goal for the All Whites. So, I mean, all aboard the Ben Wayne train, Colby.
And Ollie Sale, another A-League player, I believe he got his debut in that match as well. Clean sheet, good to see.
Yeah, and I think Ben Old as well was the other one. There's three of them, I think, on the same night. So, yeah, exciting. I mean, I'm particularly excited about the squad after how we went at the Olympics. So it's just building on from momentum from there. And every game the All Whites have played, seemingly in recent history, has been a friendly. And I'm wanting to get the qualifiers to get started so we can actually have something to talk about. So it's good that they've finally kicked off.
And you've got Fiji tomorrow?
Yeah. I think Tuesday morning, or maybe Tuesday morning. Yeah.
Top of the table clash. I mean, it's really all for the playoff, just like it was back in the Australia days in Oceania. The big matches were just New Zealand and whoever you get in the Interconfed playoff. So
it's the chance to be in a hotel in Peru at 4 a.m. being woken up by fireworks.
Who'd pass it up?
Yeah.
And Shanen, what didn't you like this week?
I know we're probably going to pile a lot on Perth Glory later on in the pod, but I don't like to really single out players too much, but Mitch Oxborough, I'm pretty sure this was his first game back at Glory's home ground. 94th minute, you're down 4-1. He slides in with a reckless tackle to Akbari that could have seriously injured him. straight red. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but that's the kind of stuff you really don't want to see in the game. It's just needlessly reckless. I understand there might have been some frustration with the whole situation, but to come in with that sort of challenge on like a young, talented player is just a bit bizarre for me.
It's like your stereotypical own goal, that one. Yep. Straight to the point. Straight to someone's leg and hopefully not breaking it. But yes, all's well that ends well. Jesse, what about you? Own goal, mate?
Well, mine's a seamless segue over from Ben Waine in my moment of the week to, going back through some of the Knicks highlights recently, just reminding myself of how we've been, and going back to not the most recent Newcastle display where we got thumped, but the one before that when Ben Waine scored. A certain tune came on as he scored the goal. And you may recall, Colby, that I put Leicester City's soundtrack every time they score a goal as my own goal a couple of weeks ago, because every time Leicester City score a goal, it's like every single time, right? Ben Waine scores, that exact song comes on. So basically, I've completely got egg on my face at this point, because the very team I support also has the same theme song as Leicester City, who I ripped into about a couple of weeks ago on the pod. So it's a really long-winded way of saying I'm eating humble pie right now, Colby.
I just don't think we go far enough with that kind of thing, Jesse. I know you're not a fan, but I remember some years ago, I was in South Korea for a friend's wedding. And while we were there, we went and saw a baseball game, as you do, which I highly recommend. And as all the players were coming out, each individual player has their own music. Don't know whether they've chosen it, don't know whether the club's chosen it, but anytime they come out to bat or something like that, their music comes on. And I think we need that for individual goal scorers in Australia.
That's actually a cracking idea. I mean, I could probably get behind that. It's just, I referred to it as moment washing a couple of weeks ago, just hoping that takes off. And it's essentially meaning that every moment has to be the same. It's like every time Victory scores a goal, it has to have the same sound. And I'm just like, I can understand why people do it, because it generates some atmosphere, but it also means that every single goal sounds the same. And
yeah, I would love it. Players choose their own as well, so they can choose the wackiest, wildest songs. I mean, you might probably run into some copyright issues. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
Fuck it. It's the A-League. People aren't going to care.
And Joey Champness can provide his own music. He can
exactly.
hand in the microphone and it'll sing pitch side.
Joey C can provide his own, but then there'd be ones like the goalkeeper, if they ever got a goal, they'd have the most outrageous song, surely, because they think, if I ever get a goal in my career, no one's ever going to hear this. So, and then it comes on. So I don't know, something to think about, Townsend and friends. So, you can give us some royalties for that idea. Some discussion news items, boys. Oh, let's before we do that, I've got a bit of an own goal this week as well, and it's people talking about COVID being a key factor in low crowds in the A-League. I mean, they're pretty much scoring own goals on themselves this week, because the AFL kicked off, the NRL was, I think that started the week before, or it's all been pretty much starting recently, and look at those numbers. Great crowds at the AFL. I think they were down 25% or something, but still people turning out in force. So yeah, I think we've just got to get past that in the A-League now and just go to games.
Interesting too with the AFL. I mean, they had their first game of the round on the Wednesday. I think normally it's a Thursday night, and it's normally Carlton Richmond, but this time they had the grand final replay on the Wednesday. And I think that even for a sporting juggernaut and as big as the AFL, they couldn't get the crowds they wanted on a Wednesday. And I think, you've got to take a lesson from that and be like, you're dragging people out very much with COVID still around on a Wednesday night. And you're right to point that out, Colby, because a lot of the criticism of the A-League has been, a lot of games on Tuesdays and Wednesdays. Where are the crowds? Well, I think it just goes to show that a number of codes would struggle to get a good crowd on a Wednesday night.
But they're still turning out in much, much bigger numbers than the A-League. They're only down 25%, where we had a good crowd in the Melbourne derby this weekend. I think it was 18,000 or something. It looked really good, sounded really good. It was a good derby, but just can't help but remember, I don't know, 5-ish years ago when it was, 18,000 no matter who Victory played, and the derbies were like 40,000 plus at Docklands and stuff. Not that Docklands is a great football stadium, but the numbers have dropped off. But on to some news items now. The biggest one, and you alluded to this, Shanen, Richie Garcia gone, relieved of his duties with immediate effect after being dominated by the Raw, which is not a sentence I get to say often on this pod these days. The Raw also beat Western Sydney when Carl Robinson got sacked as well. So coach killers, my boys. But Shanen, your burner, Orange Uno card, has got a question for us on Twitter. Who should be the next Perth Glory coach? Personally, they think Ernie Merrick. So I'm guessing you're going to say Ernie Merrick.
I really love Ernie as a bloke. He and I get along really well, but I don't think so. I don't think Ernie Merrick's what the Perth Glory need. I think they need someone who can, like, for example, that Mitch Oxford challenge I alluded to earlier. They need a manager that can make sure that stuff like that never happens, that can instill real discipline. I'm not saying Ernie Merrick can't, but I know he's not available, but they need like a bastard kind of manager like Kevin Muscat who can just put fear into the players, knowing that performances like that are absolutely unacceptable. So I don't really know who's available off the top of my head, but probably not Ernie for me.
Jesse, anyone you'd like to see come in and manage Perth?
I don't know. It's really tough because when we talked about the first managers to go early in the season, I think a few of you guys had Garcia as first on the chopping block, and it's taken a long time. And I think the reason why I point that out is that it then has a knock-on effect as to who's actually available, because and maybe if it was earlier in the season and managers are getting culled pretty quickly, you might have some options. But looking around, it feels a little barren. I'm not sure what you guys feel. But it does look a bit barren, and maybe that is reflective in the fact that we're talking about Ernie Merrick, because maybe he's one of the only ones we can see that's around.
Yeah, that's right. Depending on what your criteria are, if you want an Australian manager, look, maybe the time is now to dip into some of the NPL stocks, some of the overseas-based Australian managers, but they don't tend to want to come home unless they've failed in Greece or Cyprus or somewhere like that. We shall see.
Get a New Zealand manager. Get a New Zealand manager so you can claim.
Why not?
Them, just like them.
Why not?
Pavlova.
Just like Gianni Stensness. More on him later. West Ham have knocked out Sevilla in the Europa League. I would be remiss not to mention this, even though Tommy's not on the pod this week. Have to mention it. They're through to the last 8 thanks to an extra time strike again from Yarmolenko, giving the club another winner in as many weeks. What a moment for him, and what a moment for West Ham. What
an absolute moment. And I'm absolutely amazed at how great our Europa League coverage is these days. It's the attention to detail. I know every Europa League game that's happening at every given time. And, I haven't even got a team in that competition that I support. So I think I just owe more than a game podcast to that.
Well, look, if Tommy had his way, we would be covering the Conference League and the Nations Leagues and just a lot more football. The 2 Bundesliga as well, where Sao Paulo are sitting top with 7 games left to play, I believe. So that's another shout out to a league that's close to all of our hearts. But poor old Jackson Irvine's been caught up with COVID, won't make his way to the Roos, and won't be able to be as instrumental to St. Pauli for the next couple of weeks. A couple more items. Shanen, one for you. Celtic Super Cup. Is this going to go ahead or what? We've seen some tweets from some other journos this week saying it could be actually off after, I believe, tickets have gone on sale.
Yeah, look, if Jason Pine says he doesn't think it's going to go ahead, I'm inclined to trust him because he's usually spot on the money with these things. And at first when he tweeted that, people were like, oh, maybe not. Now the fact that the Scottish media's got on board has kind of said like similar things to this, and people have made note of the fact that like Rangers have only tweeted about it once and not for a while, and Celtic have tweeted about it a few times, not for a while. Man, if you bought a ticket, you'd probably be like shitting bricks at the moment because it looks more
Jeez.
likely to me that it's not going to be on than it is going to be on.
You'd be combing through the Ticketmaster terms and conditions. And speaking of internationals played in Australia, we also heard the kind of weird news that Brazil might like their postponed World Cup qualifier against Argentina to be played in Australia. Shannon, is there any truth to this? Do you know anything about this one?
I don't know anything about anything, Colby, but
It's
based
a
on my
podcast, though.
face,
You could say whatever you want.
based on my face for anyone who's watching, it sounds very weird first hearing that, the fact that they would want to play, in Australia, because what kind of advantage is that going to give either team? I believe a home crowd is one of the most important things to a World Cup qualifier. So if they're playing in Australia, getting like a bunch of people who probably watch football once every couple of years when like Manchester United comes out here, what's that going to do for them? Like nothing.
It's a decent Brazilian population in Australia, isn't there?
Oh yeah, probably. We see
Get a
with
good
Daniel
turnout
Pena.
somewhere in Sydney.
We see with Daniel Pena, like a fair few of them turn out. I know there's like a big Sao Paulo fan base in Sydney, but nothing compared to Brazil, obviously.
Let's say another country that's got a huge Brazilian population they didn't expect is Ireland. You can take the qualifier to Ireland. Imagine that. Dublin.
Why not? Coming up next, the A-League men's. Boys, Melbourne Victory held the champs, Melbourne City, to a 1-1 draw after 120 minutes played by the Victory in Japan midweek. This was a cracking Melbourne derby, as we mentioned earlier. Rojas and Falami combining for the first goal for the Victory. Victory looked like they were controlling early portions of this game, although they were, hitting City on the transition a lot of the time. City, a lot of forays into the box. Curtis Good eventually got one back for City with a good header into the ground from a set piece. Looks like one from the training grounds on the verge of half time. Frustrating lapse in concentration for the Victory, but that's the way the scores would remain. Shannon, go to you first. What did you think of the derby? And 2 points dropped for City or Victory. How did you see it?
Firstly, like the Melbourne derby rarely disappoints, does it? Another outstanding match. Marco Rojas, man, he's been playing like 2012 Marco Rojas lately. And it makes me wonder, I'm not really sure what's going on because I'm not like Kiwi football guy like Jesse or Jason Pine. Why has he kind of been on the outer with the New Zealand national team? Because Marco Rojas is a player. I watched that match against PNG that they absolutely need by the looks of it. So what's going on there? But 2 points gained or 1 point, 2 points dropped or 1 point gained for Victory. I think in the first half, it definitely, looked unfair to them that it was a draw. But that last 10 minutes, they would have been walking away from it thinking, man, we got away with one. Like even Kelleher, when they had like a couple of corners left, he was asking the ref, is it over yet? Is it over yet? They were panicking. So the fact that they got away without losing that match at the end, yeah, that would be feeling very lucky.
Yeah, I agree. Like I personally, I don't know why Rojas hasn't come back into the setup. And I figured when we were playing the matches last year that maybe it had something to do with the fact that there was a huge emphasis on building the youth side of the team, and there's some really exciting young players. And yeah, I can only point to that as maybe being a reason why he wasn't there last year. But the fact that we're now in the World Cup year and he's showing so much form, I mean, put it this way: if you had a former Socceroo playing that well at this point in a World Cup year, then they're probably going to be playing, aren't they? So yeah, we'll have to see in the coming months what the reasons are if he does get back in, because I mean, on current form, he should.
And you mentioned Kelleher, Shannon. Yeah, he was shitting himself in the last 10 minutes of that game with wave after wave of attack coming from City. I couldn't believe that City didn't get up in this game. But yeah, excellent effort, as we mentioned, for the VUC to hold on, especially given their 120 minutes in Japan midweek. We know A-League squads aren't the biggest, but the Victory do have a backup keeper, and Kelleher hasn't been he's been pretty far from convincing, I think a lot of people would say, in the past couple of weeks. But it just seems to me that Popovic just doesn't trust Acton, does he?
Sadly not, and I don't understand why. I know Matt Acton isn't exactly Gianluigi Buffon, but when Acton has played for the Victory, he has looked decent enough, in my opinion. And the fact that, like, what happened with City when Tom Glover wasn't playing the best, even though you can argue he hasn't been playing the best for like a year, he got dropped for Matt Sutton, and then he got brought back, and he didn't play amazing in the derby, but you could tell the fact that he knew that his position wasn't guaranteed and he could be dropped made him have that extra bit of hunger, extra, like, performance. So if Tony Popovic wanted to be brave and drop Evan Kelleher for a game, 2 or 3, bring in Matt Acton, if Kelleher comes back into the lineup afterwards, I feel like he would be a far better player for that experience. Because if you're a keeper and you don't feel like you have any real competition, what's to stop you from making all these silly errors all the time?
What's your view, Jesse? Because it's an interesting one, just about like dropping keepers in general, because there are sort of two schools of thought. One is, you need good competition and you need a one banging on the door, and it's, perfectly healthy to drop them, because they'll come back stronger, like we've seen and like Shannon was just mentioning. But the other side to that is that, they're quite sensitive. Goalkeepers, and if they're constantly having to look over their shoulders and worried about making a mistake, it could just freak them out and make them play worse.
Are we going down the protected species narrative?
I think like animals in the zoo, like animals in the zoo,
like antelope. Yeah, no, I think I'd probably be in the school of thought is that I like consistency with the goalkeeper, so I wouldn't want a goalkeeper getting rotated very often. But I think if we take this situation for what it is, if you've got a game days after another game and there is a need for someone to be rested, or there's an opportunity, or you have a cup game just another couple of days after another game, I think that's when you definitely have to consider rotation and trust the second keeper. Because if you don't trust the second keeper in that scenario, when do you use them? Because I mean, ultimately, in a cup competition, if you go deep into it, you're probably going to end up bringing your first goalkeeper in at the business end of that competition as well. So you have to give your second goalkeeper some time, and that's at least my opinion. I think you need to trust them to some degree. If you don't, then I probably think the second choice goalkeeper is probably going to be looking for a new club pretty soon.
And all eyes, or more eyes, you might say, were up the other end of the pitch in this game, with Jamie McLaren missing a golden chance in the 89th minute for City. Meanwhile, Daggers has been in red-hot form for the Victory. We put a poll on our Twitter at the end of this game saying, who would you rather starting against Japan? And we only gave the option of Macca or Daggers, but that poll was actually a lot closer than I thought it would be in the end, with Daggers coming out at 53% and Macca 46%. Is that how you'd see it, Shannon?
No.
Ooh. So you're Macca over Daggers then?
Well, see, on form, D'Agostino's, much better player, but Jamie McLaren, even when he's having shit games, he still somehow manages more often than not to find the back of the net. And the fact that he's played for the Socceroos now like 20 plus times, it's a crucial World Cup qualifier. To be honest, I would start FornaROOli out of all of them. But if it's only those two, I'd be starting the more experienced one who's got a couple of goals at international form. Bring D'Agostino off the bench so he can show that bit of X factor and maybe cause some havoc.
Well, I look forward to see Mitch Duke starting for the Socceroos on Thursday night. More on that later, listeners. We will get to previewing the Socceroos' upcoming World Cup qualifiers. But moving on in the A-League now, Central Coast Mariners have tamed the Mac Bulls after a Milicic brain explosion in Mudgee. Orenia with the double for the Mariners. But all the talk was about what Milicic did in the first half. What happened there, Shannon?
Yeah, I'm done trying to figure out what Milicic is doing, but the fact that they're losing by this margin to the Mariners, they got absolutely slaughtered, maybe goes to show that they should stop playing Moody Najjar and Craig Noon as wing backs, because any team's going to tear them apart with attackers playing as defense. And the fact that he's done this in the first half too, it makes me wonder if he's doing okay. You know, he might just need a big hug and a cup of tea.
So for anyone who didn't see this game, Milicic made 3 substitutions on the 30-minute mark and just looked to have absolutely lost it. And from there, it seemed pretty one-way traffic for the rest of the game. I think you'd have to say it was all Mariners. Like the scoreline is 4-2, but really it was a pretty dominant performance from the Mariners. I think they could have had like 6 or 7 goals in this game, and they just looked that good. Or maybe it was just MacArthur looking that bad, because I haven't seen the Mariners play like this in a while.
Have you ever done that on FIFA career mode before, Colby? Just take 3 people off and just say, you're all going back to the bench.
That's a rage triple sub, and I have done that in FIFA career mode many times. It doesn't help though; it never seems to help me.
Play morale dips.
Absolutely. But Shannon, have you got any more to say on this one? We've talked about the PK League moments off the pitch.
Yeah, I just want to give a shout out to Noah Smith. It was good to see him. I think he's claiming the goal because it was a bit 50-50 whether or not it was Urenia's hat-trick or his goal. Great to see him kind of come in and score that goal. You could tell what it meant to him. And I really love that the Mariners brought both the sauce bottles and the cannon all the way down to Mudgee to give, us people in the country that realistic Mariners experience. But next time they're going to do it, maybe just dig up a palm tree or two and, bury it in the...
That was all that was needed. Yeah, we just needed to get the full Mariners experience. Newcastle's Central Coast Mariners rivals also had a 4-goal win, snapping their awful run of form. But before we get to Newcastle, it was against the Knicks. We'll go to them first, Jesse. What's happened here? Just a bad night at the office for the Knicks?
I mean, the easy scapegoat for me would be to say we had players out. And to be honest, looking at the game and the major moments in it, it felt like we had players out. I mean, it's an easy narrative for me to build, but we've had a very solid and kind of rinse and repeat first 11 for most of the season. And I think that's actually built a lot of trust and some good partnerships in the players, but just goes to show you sort of peel back one layer and we were pretty exposed. Secondly, we do have a tendency when we do have a bad day to have a really bad day. And unfortunately, Newcastle is not the team that you want to, have that bad day against. They seem to be putting teams to the sword. And some of the strikes were just, you've also got to put credit to the finishing. It was pretty ruthless from their side of things. So I think it's a combination of a really good day at the office for them and just a pretty flat performance by us and some players missing.
The main marker for me of a bad night at the office for Knicks is when you've got Eli Babalj scoring his first goal in, I don't know, like probably 15 years or something against you. So that's I mean, take nothing away from him. It was a good finish, a thumping header, well taken, and what a moment for him. But come on. And Shannon, we've got a quote from Teo Pellizzari in comms in that game. These are the box office Jets we were promised. We've been split on this pod about the Jets. Some saying they're going to come good, others saying they're rubbish. Where do you see it? Is this a turning point for them?
Look, you'd think so, but over the past however long I've been watching the A-League, whenever the Jets seem to have a really good match like this or a couple of matches, you start to naively believe, like, yeah, this is going to be it. And it rarely happens. So I'm a bit hesitant to say whether or not it'll be the turning point, because no matter what I say, I'm going to look like an idiot with the Jets because they're that hard to predict. I will just say they are very entertaining to watch.
I think it's a turning point for the Jets. Papa's ball is here to stay. It definitely clicked for them in the second half of this game. Bumal got a double himself, and the second one was an absolute rocket. So, look, we'll wait and see whether this turns their season around. But there was yet another game in the A-League with a 4-goal margin, or a four goals to win it, sorry. It was Brisbane away at Perth with a 4-1 win. Another A-League men's manager relieved of their duties after a comprehensive loss to Brisbane. We talked about that a little bit before, and we'll chat about the game in a moment. But Shanen, just to round off the chat on the manager sacking, definitely right decision to get rid of Tricky Ricky.
Yeah, I was actually a little bit shocked they got rid of him because Tony Sage has publicly been very stubborn about sticking with Richie Garcia, even when you could tell, he was just on borrowed time. So I was kind of thinking it might be one of these cases like Carl Robinson where they're going to go, but it just drags on forever. So full credit to the Glory for actually having some conviction and getting rid of him because it's been absolutely dire. I know we can say like the schedule and COVID and all this stuff, and to an extent that'll play a part. But I really liked. I don't know if you boys watched the game last night and seen Jack Clisby post game. He kind of said, never mind all the travel and all this COVID and stuff. We know that wasn't how we should play. That's how we shouldn't defend and all this stuff. So I really liked that a player who's got a bit of criticism has stood up, put his hand up and said, look, all the boys know it's not good enough. So hopefully some of these older players like Jack Clisby can start to put in a bit of effort, start to put in a bit of leadership and help save this season a little bit, because I don't think they're going to make finals, but they can at least make themselves look respectable.
Well, Shanen, you asked, did we watch the game? A lot of people wouldn't have watched this game. It kicked off at, 10:45 p.m.?
Yeah.
Was it 10:45 p.m. daylight time? So Melbourne, Sydney time, 10:45 p.m. Look, not saying that Perth need to do everything to cater for the East Coast, but Jesse, you're used to watching A-League matches with a bit of a time difference, back in the day when the Knicks are playing in New Zealand. What do you think of scheduling like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's normal in New Zealand to sort of watch an Australian game at 9:30, if it's a 7:30 kickoff. So that's probably the latest you want to go. I think once you get past 10 o'clock, it's pretty rough.
You're into the Premier League by then,
Well, that's the thing. That's it. Like I was giving people a bit of stick in the group chat last night, calling them Euro snobs for watching the Premier League, even though I was watching the Premier League. But I think that's the problem you run into if you go too late on a Saturday night. No one wins in that situation, especially the broadcaster.
And I actually found it funny because I was watching and scrolling through Twitter and I seen all these tweets blowing up like, oh, what's the ref doing or something? And I'm like, did I miss something in this game? And then I realized, oh, wait, it's 12 o'clock at night. People are probably watching the Premier League or stuff. So it was a bit weird seeing people tweet during a match about, a match on the other side of the world.
Because it was not only the late start, right? But it was I think there was about at least an hour's gap between the main kickoff times and that game as well. So I don't know what the reason for that was, but you would think that they could have reduced that to sort of get some people who were keen on watching and just, ride the momentum into the next game. I think that's really what you need if you're Paramount Plus to keep the eyeballs on the A-League. And final game of A-League that I guess we're going to cover on the pod today, Sydney 3, Woo 0. Sydney dominant. But what did we actually learn from this game? I thought this one was going to be a blockbuster, but I just found myself mainly watching the Melbourne Derby during this time. Shanen.
Yeah, to be honest, I don't think many people, even people in New South Wales, would have been switching to this one over the Melbourne Derby, because you watch this one for a couple of minutes, you've watched the Melbourne Derby, the atmosphere is night and day. I did watch this game on replay, the extended highlights at least. Mustafa Amini, I was very pleased to see get a goal, and he looks to be playing really well. So people saying his career was finished before he come with Sydney FC, and his knees are wrecked and all this stuff. It's good to see him kind of proving them wrong, and maybe even he can work his way back into Socceroos contention later on. Who knows?
Well, I mean, we're pretty light on in the midfields. So maybe, you never know. And it was a well-taken goal, won it high and just slotted it. So very good. Adam Lafondra, meanwhile, hasn't scored in like 8, maybe 9 games now for Sydney. Bobo, I suppose, looked okay in this game, and he's got to get a goal every now and again. But those problems remain for Sydney. But look, haven't been hearing the as much of a meltdown on Twitter after 2 wins on the bounce for Sydney. Everything seems to be fine again now.
Imagine choosing Lafondra as your golden boot at the start of the season. That's what I did, and
rip.
A moment's silence.
I chose Prijovic. I was all over the social saying Prijovic would be my outside chance for the golden boot. He's done okay, but I think he scored like 4 goals. So
the A-League Arnautovic.
Yeah, the A-League Eastern Europeans Latin.
Yeah,
I just went straight bat and said Macca. So lock that in for $1.01. Corica back to being a genius now, boys. Are we changing our mind on him?
I just think that the Woo. I just don't think. I think what you said at the beginning about not knowing what just to think of either team at the end of this result pretty much sums it up. I don't feel like I've learned anything more about the Woo than in previous weeks. I feel like these teams are playing each other at a rate of knots at the moment, and taking the next example, they got absolutely thumped by Newcastle, but then beat them a week or 2 before that. It is just erratic at the moment. So I don't know. The results.
A-League is so tough to call this season. The Woo are still 9 points ahead of Sydney with a game in hand, and you just wouldn't think it on the back of that performance. But you just never know week to week. I think, Shannon, you were talking about the Jets making us look like fools. I think there are a lot more teams than that making us look like fools in the A-League this season. There's one more game left in play as we're recording. It's Adelaide and Western Sydney. At Western Sydney, it's currently 0-0. So we're not going to cover that one on the pod this week. But let's just hope there's not a scorpion kick, and we'll move on to the Premier League. We've got to start in the Premier League with Wolves and Leeds. The game had it all. It had injuries, a red card, buckets of added time, a late winner, and a comeback. And to see just what it meant to Leeds in the context of their relegation battle. Can Jesse March, though, steer Leeds to safety after they produced that sensational comeback win against a 10-man Wolves? Jesse, we'll start with you.
Well, I was looking for the Apple TV cameras. Where's the next series of Ted Lasso being filmed? And I thought it was at Molineux the other night because it was a fairy tale comeback. And did you see the fist pumps and the hugs with the players at the end? He seems like a great guy who's really embracing the Ted Lasso narrative. So I'm enjoying that side of things. But having a very good friend of mine who's a big Leeds fan, he said he had to go walk around the block and just calm down after the final whistle because, I can imagine if you were a Leeds fan, it would be an absolute roller coaster watching that game. And if you think about it as well, we'll get onto it, but the red card seems to have been a little bit controversial. And you think about how much damage Wolves sustained after the red card. It just awoke Leeds from that moment onwards. So a wild game. And it's funny because if you think about some of the best games we've had this season, they've been 3-2s. Tottenham, Manchester City was only a few weeks ago. And this is another 3-2. And, if you woke up and you just checked the score, but without even watching it, you would have known that it was a belter of a game and it didn't disappoint.
It was a belter of a game by the score, but then when you actually see the game as well, it wasn't just a 3-2 with a late winner. They were 2-0 down in half time. They were dead and buried. And then there was a red card that changed the game. Often they don't change the game and you see the team not know what to do against, less opposition or fewer men on the park. But Leeds, they just switched on, as you say. And it's the first time I think that they've ever come back to win a Premier League game after being 2 goals down at halftime. What a performance from them. But in terms of whether they can, navigate their way to staying in the Premier League next season, they lost a few players to injury in this game as well. On the way, Bamford was on, I think, for his second game, and then looked to have done his hammy again. And I don't know, by the looks of his face, he looked pretty devastated. So, didn't look like good news. And Melier got taken down in that clash with Jimenez that ended up getting Jimenez sent off. So Melier was out, and Leeds, as we've been talking about, have already been struggling with key player injuries this season. So how big of a blow would that be, Shannon?
I don't think at all, actually, because I feel I'm not a Leeds fan, but I feel when I watch Leeds play, just this amazing belief, and I feel like everyone in the stadium would be feeling the same. All the players would be feeling the same. It feels like no matter, even when they went down 2-0, I just had this feeling that like they can come back. You know what I mean? They're like the Adelaide United of the Premier League. They just seem to pull a result out of nowhere in the last couple of minutes. And I feel like no matter who gets injured, who gets suspended, what happens to them, I feel like this amazing belief that they can just do it. I know that might just be like the fairy tale story, you know, capturing my heart. But yeah, I got a real feeling like I'm all aboard the hype train of this one.
Can I also point out, like I did mention it a few weeks ago on the pod. I think I was speaking to Tommy, but I remember this as a Liverpool fan when he was coaching, when Marsh was coaching, I think it was Salzburg at the time. And it was, I can't remember if it was Champions League, but they were dead and buried. They were down like 3-0, I think it was at halftime. And then they came out and they scored 3 goals. I think this is when Haaland was still playing for them and Minamino. Basically, Minamino played himself into a Liverpool contract in that one game. But they had Hwang, they had Minamino, they had them all on the pitch, and they scored 3 goals. And it was actually a late Salah goal that got Liverpool across the line to win 4-3. But this was also televised because he did a halftime speech, which was included in an All or Nothing or something to do with RB Salzburg. And everyone sort of thought it was a mixture of cheesiness because, you know, he's American and he's doing the halftime speech, half in German, half in English. So take that, I guess, with a little bit of grain of salt. But whatever he says definitely connects with the players. Like that's an example of getting a team that was dead and buried to come out of nowhere and redeem themselves. So clearly he's got a bit of a Midas touch when it comes to the halftime speech.
Well, he doesn't need to say much at Leeds, does he? Just turns around to the boys, taps the sign and just says, believe.
Fair play.
Elsewhere in relegation battle, Everton got up 1-0 with another late winner against your Newcastle United, Shannon. Thoughts on Newcastle's chances? They've had a great run of form, but they're still very much in and about that relegation zone.
Yeah, I don't think we'll get relegated. I know it's weird hearing me talk positively about Newcastle now, but Eddie Howe, man, what a manager. What he has done with this side in such a short period of time, what Joel Linton has done with himself. He was the most hated person. Any Newcastle group, his name was mentioned, you'd get your ass kicked if you mentioned his name positively.
Would you say he's now the second coming of Patrick Vieira?
He is our best player, no doubt about it. And the fact that he's managed to take himself from this figure that everyone was like the butt of the joke, no one rated him. He's managed to work hard, you know, reinvent himself. And
well, he's reinvented himself from Joe Linton to Joel Linton. I think he's just changed a letter, hasn't he?
And I honestly believe he's an outside chance for a Brazilian call-up. I believe he should be on the Brazilian side. That may be bias, but he has done that much for Newcastle. It's like when Oli Bozanic come to Mariners in Aussie terms, and he kind of like turned around the team, put that composure in the midfield, had that leadership. It really turned their season around. And I believe when we survive relegation, 90% of it's because of Joel Linton and Eddie Howe. Just amazing. But the fact that we lost this match, the fact that Everton is even in the relegation discussion, they both baffle me because this is a match Newcastle should have won. Your boy, Chris Wood, like, come on. Like, what is he doing? But I guess good on Everton. They managed to show resilience, and you could tell what it meant to everyone in that stadium when they scored that goal. Even as a Newcastle fan, I was a bit like, yeah, okay. Like, it is what it is.
Yeah, well, like Colby said, you've been on such a fantastic run of form, and there's definitely like considering where you were before then, like there's definitely wins in that streak that you would have expected a draw or a couple of points dropped here and there. But the fact that he's just had back-to-back wins has made a huge difference. So I suppose in that, with that kind of context, a loss along the way isn't the end of the world right now.
I was listening to a podcast maybe a couple of weeks ago, and they were talking about Everton's relegation survival hopes. And, you know, you often hear with a lot of these when they're talking about the teams, like they'll get out the fixture list and they'll say, oh, yeah, we've got, you know, a couple of top 6 teams, but it's mainly teams that are below us. So, you know, it's all to play for. But they were saying about Everton, it's all to do with their home games. It's all to do with Goodison Park. And like, that's what's going to save them. And you could see that in this one. Like, it was just limbs at the end when they got up. So maybe there's something to that.
Yep.
And the other thing in this game, of course, was the Just Stop Oil pitch invader who like cable tied himself to the goalpost. And I mean, that's just given us some peak Premier League moments with, I don't know if you've seen the GIF going around with the guy like trying to cut it off and that's become a meme. Yeah. And it's just it's given us a lot. But look, I think they should have left him on there. I think he could have been pretty handy on corners.
Should always have a man on the post.
Always have a man on the post. So
yeah. I mean, you could have left him there for the entire game, and then everyone could have just packed up and gone home. He'd still be there now.
That's it. That's what he wanted. But boys, at the other end of the table, let's have a quick chat about that rather than particular games. Because it looks like we've got a title race. So on Tuesday, you know, good old Crystal Palace, 0-0, Manchester City. Dropped points. So Liverpool went and won their game against Arsenal on Thursday. So now they're within a point of Man City. Jesse, how are you feeling?
I'm always optimistic about our chances, but I was never this optimistic. I thought I knew that we'd never sort of give up in the league, but very much reliant on Manchester City shitting the bed, and they've just had some poor results. And they haven't, they were lucky to get past Everton. Like, they should have conceded a last minute penalty. And we saw that luck sort of turn against them a little bit in the Palace game because they hit the post a couple of times as well. They look like a team that the deeper we go into this and the closer the points tally gets, they're going to be in a bit of crisis because they need to focus on two things. They need to focus on the league because obviously they've been leading for so long, but they're desperate to win the Champions League. And it's something's going to have to give at some point. I mean, if any team can juggle both, it's probably Manchester City, but their game against Liverpool is shouldered by their games in Spain against Atletico and back home. And those are huge games and taxing games against Simeone's team. So yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting, Colby. And to be honest, I'm just relieved we do have a title race because for a while there, it looked like it was dead and buried. And I thought it just seems really brutal to have the title race all wrapped up in January. So the fact that we've actually got one on makes it way more exciting. It's going to be so much more enjoyable to watch.
We thought it was wrapped up at Christmas, pretty much. We were all sitting here on this podcast going, well, that's gone. Let's talk about relegation. And, you know, if there's a good game, so be it. But Shanen, how are you seeing the title race?
Yeah, I feel like Pep's whole time at City, the narrative has been, when's he going to win the Champions League? He hasn't won the Champions League. And I feel like for him personally and the club, they might think, okay, now's our chance to win the Champions League. We have to do it. But it's not going to look good, right? The fact that they had this lead that everyone was like, oh, they got the title wrapped up. Now Liverpool have caught them. And, you know, they're at the pointy end of the Champions League up against very good teams. I have a feeling that they might not win either. And if that happens, the question should be really, do Manchester City move on from Pep Guardiola? Because a good manager, a great manager like Pep, should be able to juggle both the league and the Champions League, especially when they had that sort of commanding lead. And I feel like he could do it at Barcelona. He could do it at Bayern, even though I don't think he won the Champions League at Bayern, but he could still juggle things okay. But it feels like when he tries to do both at Manchester City, he ends up achieving nothing. And Jurgen Klopp, managed to do like juggle both. Like a good manager can do it. So the question should be, does Pep how long does Pep stay at Manchester City if he doesn't achieve either? Is he gone?
Fraud. And
yeah, I think personally for me, like I think that your point on Klopp there really it's a really important one, because personally I think that the thing that Liverpool fans have over City fans, at least for now, and I say with an asterisk, at least for now, is the fact that they haven't won the Champions League. And my biggest fear is City will go on and win the Champions League. If they win the Champions League and the league in the same year, it's so demoralizing as an opposition fan. So I'm just hoping they drop one of them and that we win the other. But like, there are some quality teams obviously left in the Champions League that could knock both teams out. And
it's all about. Sorry, Jesse. It's all about Liverpool and City, though, isn't it? Like they could meet in the Champions League final. They could meet in the FA Cup final, and then of course you've got that crucial match in the Premier League coming up in a couple of weeks' time. So yeah, we could be in for a couple of epics.
Hoping. I'm just, the only thing left as far as I'm concerned is I just hope we don't fall off from here. I just hope we don't have like a fizzle where we get really close and then they pull away again and that's it. I'm just hoping that this conversation we're having is still happening in a month from now.
So we've got a title race. We've got a very healthy or unhealthy, depending on who you support, relegation battle. But we've also got a top four race because, of course, Arsenal, despite that blip against Liverpool, that's an inevitable loss for almost all teams. They, of course, got back to winning ways against Aston Villa on Saturday, winning 1-0. Tottenham, they have been pretty inconsistent, but still managed to look pretty convincing and be there or thereabouts as well. 2-0 over Brighton. Manchester United are very close as well, and so West Ham. Arsenal, though, seem to be pulling away. Are they going to lock away top four, boys?
Maybe. I feel like West Ham, my favorite team to watch, aside from Leeds, obviously, they always seem to pull out a banging performance and they always seem to just somehow scrape by in these games like Sevilla where you don't think they're going to win. So they're my outside chance to lock in a top four, and that would be absolutely incredible for me to see personally. Someone different, getting in the top four. I think Arsenal probably have the best chance out of who you've mentioned, but yeah, I don't think it's a lock in yet.
It's massively understated the fact that they haven't got other competitions to worry about. Arsenal, like they are just literally focusing game to game in the Premier League, and it was very ironic that Arteta was complaining about the short time span between the two games this week, because what he's describing is what everyone else has had to do with European competitions all year. So they've just got one focus right now, and you can see it the way they're playing. It's very much focused on one thing.
Oh, and it's great to see, and we've talked about it before, but the young players who are coming up there, and the way it's all starting to click for Arsenal, it's very exciting, and they've got rid of some of the bad apples, and they've they just look to be hitting a real stride. It's good to see them back there.
Just on the game, Colby, like watching that one, because it was the only game obviously on last night in the Premier League, and watching it through. Going on to what you were saying about the young players, the touch and the speed of passing just was so clearly superior to Villa. Like, I was sitting there thinking, like, Villa, they don't actually have a bad team. Like, they've actually got a few players on there who are pretty good, but they just couldn't shift the ball fast enough. And every time they would finally get it out to a wing back, by the time they'd done that, Arsenal were organised and had them pinned in the corner. I don't think they had a shot on target all first half, and I think it took them to the second half, like the end of the second half, to get a shot on target. So the defense has been so sound from Arsenal, but it's not just that. Like what they've added in the last couple of weeks seems to be this crisp one-touch passing, which is just really nice to watch. Even if you don't support them, you have to applaud the football.
And still to play in this short round of the Premier League, Leicester and Brentford and Tottenham West Ham. Tottenham West Ham in particular could have implications, of course, both on 48 points as to who's going to go or have a chance of playing European football out of them next season, let alone the top four. Who have you got in this one? Shanen?
West Ham. I'm going to back Tommy's boys and go West Ham.
Jesse?
As far as the top four at the moment, I have to say Arsenal.
All right. But in the Tottenham West Ham game?
Oh, sorry. I thought you said the top four. Yeah. No, in the Tottenham West Ham game, I'm pretty sure Arsenal's not going to win that.
So West Ham then.
Spurs on a win-loss pattern. So if they won their last game, they're probably going to lose it.
Flip of the coin with Tottenham, isn't it?
It is a home game though for them, so I'm going to back Spurs on this one.
And the FA Cup, boys, is heating up as well. Chelsea won this morning, 2-0 over Borough. Palace and Everton playing tonight, 11:30 p.m. local time, and then tomorrow you've got Southampton hosting Manchester City and Nottingham Forest hosting Liverpool tomorrow morning. So that could, that's getting very interesting as well. And you know, if there are any important results, we'll be looking back at those as well. Any very interesting ones. Otherwise, it could just be BAU, you might think. But look out for that and some more Premier League next week on the pod. Coming up next, we'll review or preview the Roos upcoming World Cup qualifiers. So Shanen, the Roos, they've got 5 potential debutants in the squad. That squad dropped this week for those crucial World Cup qualifiers against Japan and Saudi Arabia. Daggers, Atkinson, Gianni Stensness, Rolls, and of course Bruno FornaROli eligible to play for the Socceroos due to that FIFA rule change that made him eligible thanks to being an Australian citizen or a naturalised Aussie. Firstly, what do you make of the Bruno call-up? There's been a lot that's been said about it.
Yeah, look, I understand people's disappointment because realistically, our national team shouldn't be in the position where we need to call up a 34-year-old, Uruguayan import to the A-League as our number 9 option. We should have some young players coming through. But the fact of the matter is we don't. Yes, it is a short-term solution, but in a crucial World Cup qualifier where we need to score goals, we need to win, he is our best option at doing that. Even though he's 34, he's still a fantastic player and he can cause unique troubles to what any other Australian player can do. He turns his back, he's tricky. People, when he first come to Melbourne City, they jokingly call him FornaROli because of all the havoc he caused in the box. But that's what we want. That's what we want up front. So personally, I don't think we have a better option at number 9, as dire as that may be. So, if he's available, we should pick our best players. We should pick the best available players.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. And we do have an availability issue at the moment, like putting the pathway to one side. But I think, we've even got a goal problem when we've got all of our strikers fit and healthy. And that really is the thing that speaks to the development issue. But, we've had, I suppose, a lot of people on social media pointing to that development problem and sort of pointing out the age and is a Uruguayan naturalized Aussie. But look, we've had this problem for years, and I didn't see as many people complaining when we had a 37-year-old Cahill and a 30-something-year-old Jedinak getting us to the last World Cup. Like this is a problem that needs addressing, regardless of whether he's a Uruguayan or not. And like, you'd just love to see it still, though. Like, if anyone's questioning whether Bruno FornaROli wants to play for Australia and is happy to be an Australian citizen and is going to put his heart and soul into wearing the shirt, like, go and watch his interview that was up on the Socceroos website and hear how he talks about it and what it means to him to be called up. And, like, how can you not smile and how can you not love that?
Yeah, exactly. And Michael Zappone, he's mentioned a few times his first ever interview with Bruno FornaROli. He couldn't speak English. And now look at him, being a proud Australian, saying, I am Australian. But it kind of makes me a bit curious as to why people are, so annoyed about the fact that he's Uruguayan, he wasn't born here. not just his age, it's that thing because we look at like
That's right.
Martin Boyle, born in Scotland, Harry Suter, our best player, born in Scotland. We have a lot of players who are in our national team who are born overseas. Fran Karacic didn't even speak English when he was called into the whatever squad of the 2018 World Cup. And people are having issues with FornaROoli, who's lived here since like 2014 and is an Australian citizen. It just baffles me a little bit.
Yeah, that's sort of what I was getting at as well, because like a lot of people were conflating it with the development issue, which we all acknowledge is an issue. And I think actually I'm optimistic that that's being fixed due to the better pathways from A-League academies now, and that's taken years to develop. But I think we're starting to see fruit from some of those, like with the likes of the Wanderers Academy and the City Academy. There's talent coming out of Sydney. There's talent coming out of Adelaide and Brisbane. We are seeing it, and we're going to see more and more of it now, I feel, with the A-League, and particularly once we get the domestic transfer system, the pieces are all coming together. But something just didn't feel right to me, the way they were, talking about him being Uruguayan, and they were really bringing nationality into it and sort of muddying those issues. It didn't sit right with me. And like you said, Bruno FornaROoli is much more connected to Australia than a lot of the other players that are playing as active Socceroos at the moment. So anyway, we'll leave that there. Plenty more to talk about on the squad. As of today, Ben Falami and Kenny Dougal have been called up to the squad after Goodwin and Jackson Irvine had to pull out due to COVID. Big blows, Shanen?
Yeah, Goodwin in particular, I feel like given the way he played, last time he played for the Socceroos and his form, I felt like he was going to start. I felt like he was going to, play well for us and hopefully help us to a good win. So that's a bit disappointing. Jackson Irvine too. He is a key member of our starting 11, but I feel like it may be a blessing in disguise because I feel like it may give the opportunity for Denny Jonro, who I wholeheartedly believe is our best midfielder. Well, not currently, but the future of our midfield to get a start because Denny Jonro, the work he does off the ball is equivalent of having like 3 players in the midfield. So it's a real shame that Tommy Rogic is out injured because I feel like a Denny Jonro would allow someone like Tommy Rogic, who really is a luxury player, doesn't do too much defending, the freedom to attack. So hopefully, it can allow someone like Rustic to really be able to have some freedom attacking and put forward to FornaROoli to hopefully score the winner.
I actually think we've got some real problems in the midfield. No Moy, no McGree. Hopefully we'll see the likes of Kenny Dougal getting some minutes. I mean, who else is there? Like Jimmy Jago. I know Arnie loves him, so he should get some minutes, but I've never really seen the fuss there. I think our midfield's looking pretty light.
Yeah, it's a shame. Like the Socceroos seem to have an issue where when we have players out, it all seems to be in the one position. That's my feeling. Feels like if we have a problem with strikers, it's not just one, it's all of them. If we have a problem with midfielders getting injured, it seems to be all of them. So it's going to really test our squad depths, but hopefully a player like Denny Jonro, who's been playing amazing in France, he is my boy for the record, will get his chance and will play well.
And who else are you happy to see in the squad? Any other names you'd like to call out?
I am happy to see Ben Falami because it really goes to show, how much of an impact Tony Popovic has had on a bunch of players. He wasn't really a nailed-on starter last season. There was questions about him. I don't think he made the Olympics final team, if I'm not mistaken. And now all of a sudden, we've seen him playing against Vissel Kobe, come off the bench, cause some real havoc. Now he's a Socceroo. They're the kind of stories that give hope to a lot of young players. So I'm quite happy to see him in the squad. I am a bit disappointed for Mark Birighitti, who I have been told was in the initial squad but got cut. I don't think there's been a goalkeeper in the league who's been better than Birighitti, so it just baffles me. I'm not here saying Arnie picks his
Sydney
mate.
FC conspiracy, Shanen.
Just baffling a little bit quietly.
Well, that's, because you've preempted my next question with who is unlucky to miss out, and Beerers was on the top of my list as well. Like, I mean, Vukovic, I don't know if he's played much at all recently. And Redders, he's been seriously challenged for his spot at Sydney. Like, I think he had a good game, kept a clean sheet against the Woo, made a couple of good saves, but he has not had a good season by his own standards. And I think he would admit that. His form has been patchy at best, I think you would say. So I think Beer is hard pressed to miss out.
I actually think Jason Davidson too, who former Socceroo himself, I feel like he was an outside chance to make the squad because he's been playing really, really good this season. And I was half expecting him to make the squad, but I do understand, bringing in Joel King, I think he's only 2021, just moved overseas, bringing him in for that spot over Davidson, who's already, he's 31, he's already been in the Roos. So that's one of those ones where I feel like he could have been in the squad, but I understand the reasons why there.
And onto the game then itself. Obviously, we've got the Japan game coming up this Thursday night, the 24th. Huge game. It's going to be played in Australia. How's it going to play out?
Hopefully, it's going to be one of those cases where we've had big games in Sydney before in the past. We had the Iraq game, the Uruguay game, Asian Cup final, and the home crowd's really been the 12th man. Hope it's history repeating itself where, we have an iconic Socceroos moment and we have the win. I'm being blindly optimistic, but I am happy at the fact that Japan's, number 9, Yuya Osako, is out injured. I know it's not good, or COVID, whatever. I know it's not good to be happy that an opposition player's had a bit of hard luck, but I think that's the real boost that the Socceroos need, considering all our personal injury worries at the moment. So I think a 2-0 win with Bruno FornaROoli maybe scoring a consolation goal in the 93rd minute to seal the win for us.
Wow. So it's a 2-1, you saying, to Australia?
2-0.
2-0. Holy moly. I would be ecstatic with that, but it's a must win for Australia, sitting in third in the group at the moment, 3 points behind Japan in second. Absolutely critical to keep our hopes of automatic qualification alive. As we said, that'll be taking place in Sydney on Thursday night. We've seen Japan's squad. I mean, you take Osako out of it, but it's still absolutely stacked. Japan are hitting form. They're a really solid team. They've won 5 in a row in World Cup qualifiers. So it's going to be a really, really tense match. And the most critical game I think I've watched Socceroos wide since like the Syria game or since the Honduras game. Although I was less worried about the Honduras game once it got back to Australia, back to Sydney. As well, because they were playing for one result. But I think Japan will be, incredibly dangerous opposition.
Exactly. And fingers crossed my blind, stupid optimism can rub off on the team a little bit and we can get something out of it.
We'll, of course, be back next week to review the Japan game and look forward, hopefully, to the Saudi Arabia game the following week. But that'll do it for us today on the pod. Thank you again for listening. As always, you can keep up with us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. We're also on TikTok now. I think Damo started a More Than a Game TikTok. So MTAG Podcast, get around us. And we'll have links to all of those, or hopefully all of those, in the notes to this podcast. Next time, more A-League, Premier League, and the Socceroos, as we said. But until then, enjoy the football.